Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. My name is Jackson Mummy, and each week we'll be bringing you updated information about the bar exam and what you need to do in order to make the next bar exam your last bar exam. Ready to get started? Let's jump to it. Hey everybody, welcome. It is Wednesday, July 12th, and we are glad to have you with us. We have lots of questions and lots of information to share with you. Obviously, 2 weeks now until the bar exam. This is a very significant time, to say the least. And so we're excited. I know all the coaches are excited. I know that you as applicants are starting to get into your game face, and we've got lots of opportunity to talk about things that are coming up. I want to talk for just a moment. If you're a Georgia student, I want to identify something that I said in the Georgia preview video, but I want to make it really clear. I am changing my guidance a bit on how to write Georgia essays. And here's what's going on. There are 4 essays on the exam. And as I've looked back over the last 3 or 4 exams, what I've seen is a trend in which we have one question in Georgia that has as many as 9 separate calls of the question, or 10 even. And then we get some very straightforward short questions. Given that circumstance, I think it's pretty clear that instead of saying write for 45 minutes on each of those essays, that you need to reallocate your time. And so what I'm going to suggest is that the first thing you do if you're a Georgia bar taker is look at all 4 essays at the calls of the question. When you see the lengthy fact pattern and lengthy calls of the question, identify that one essay, and that's what it's been, is one of the 4, and make that a 60-minute essay. Then on the other essays, you're going to see probably 1, maybe 2 that are relatively short, that is short fact patterns or short calls of the question, and cut those down from 45 to 30 minutes. You can do that. It'll work. And in doing that, you're going to give yourself enough time for the big question and still get to the small ones. It's a bit of a change, obviously, from saying just always stay at 45 minutes. But I think sometimes we just have to adapt when we've got questions and circumstances like this. And that's what's happening in Georgia. Now, I mentioned the preview videos. They have all been posted, and you can find them in your online course. The preview videos run about 20 to 30 minutes in length. They look at the prior exam, which means February 2023. They look forward to the July exam. They have my sense of where the test is going and some general covering notes. Amanda, I'm going to throw this back to you. You've seen these preview videos. Did you find them helpful?
Yeah, I find them really helpful, especially since we are down to the wire. There's a lot of time for improvement, but students have to make decisions sometimes about, do I focus here or here? And so the preview videos aren't to say, this is the only thing that you're going to focus on right now. But if you're having trouble deciding, or you feel like, all right, I'm really strong in these 3 areas, let me just brush up on the other. It's a way to kind of focus so someone doesn't have to make the decision for you. Like sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm glad my coach tells me how much to run in the morning, because I don't know if I should run 5 miles or 7 miles. So it
Yeah.
takes some of that extra mental stuff away. But yeah, it's not like you only need to focus on those subjects now.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say is that these tend to be called prediction videos, but they really are just my sense of the exam. And you may feel very differently about what's going to be tested, and that's fine. This is just to give you some additional input here at the end. Sometimes people say, well, I'm not going to watch them because I don't have time. I think it's 20 or 30 minutes well spent, to be honest. I think you should watch them. Bob, were those videos helpful for you?
Oh, absolutely. I think they were helpful for me. And I think you always say this is not the gospel. It's not like the examiners will come and tell you, hey, Jackson, this is the exclusive. This is the creme de la creme. I think I used it like a guiding post. Hey, I still needed to do my work. I still needed to go through the Holy Grail. But at the same time, I used the videos like a guiding post. Hey, okay, Jackson says this is what might come. But at the same time, there's no guarantee, which means have that in the back of your mind, but still prepare yourself that, okay, in the event his predictions doesn't go right, which is very rare, I'm still covered on the back end. That way I am covered either way.
Yeah. I'm amused at some of our bar review companies, competitors who go out and say, it's absolutely going to be this topic within this subject. As really, what makes you think that? And then I feel bad for the applicants, the people that are following that, because they can really be led astray. So just be careful. And it actually leads me to a bigger point that I wanted to make today, and it's coming up here in a minute. I'm going to talk about the Supreme Court decisions. Look, I know you're bombarded with tons of information from lots of places, but it is mostly a distraction, and most of it isn't very good quality, and you've really got to be careful. And I really would like all of our students to just lock in and listen to us right now. There is so much chatter out there, and so much of it. And I know all of our coaches, we just kind of shake our heads. We see things and we go, no, that's not even close to the truth. That's not what's going on at all out there. And yet some bozo sets up a website and calls themselves a bar exam expert, and they say, oh, absolutely, it's going to be this. And then people go crazy. Or worse yet, somebody on Reddit that's completely anonymous posts some silliness, and then people get all wrapped around the axle on that. Which leads me to one of the things that caused a big uproar in the last week. I don't know exactly where it came from. It might have been Reddit, it might have been Google. I'm pretty sure that the big box bar reviews, somebody posted that the Lemon test in the Establishment Clause was overruled. Hello? What they were talking about was Bremerton, the case that was decided not in the last term, but the term before, which really didn't overturn Lemon. It just called into question the third prong of the Lemon test. And if you actually read the decision that Justice Gorsuch wrote, it doesn't overturn Lemon. Just telling you, I'm saving you some time here. And yet, somehow, one of the big box courses decided that they were going to tell their students that Lemon had been overruled. And so I got bombarded with emails and texts and posts and people saying, oh, Lemon's been overruled, as though this just happened. Let me be clear, that did not happen. For the purposes of the bar exam in 2 weeks, I don't think you're going to get any question dealing with the Lemon test because the examiners don't want to touch it. It's unclear what the status is. You could answer under the old Lemon test, the three-prong test, and you'd be just fine. You could answer by saying two of the prongs are still good. The third is questionable under Bremerton, but we don't know the answer, and we really don't. There's just not been any jurisprudence to tell us. And if you're in our course, go back and look at the video that I did last July, in which we talked through that case, and we explained a year ago why Lemon was still good law. And so I just want to make clear to everybody, you just can get so distracted at this point that you then go off and waste your time and you run around and you send emails and you get yourself agitated for no good reason at all. In our course, we have prepared updates for both the term 2 years ago and this last term. But I want to be really clear. The decisions of the Supreme Court in the last term will not be tested on the multi-state bar exam. If you're a Florida bar taker, there is a possibility that those decisions could be tested in the Florida essays, but no guarantee of it. And so we've given you the information and you can deal with it, but I don't think it'll be on the exam. Okay, my rant is over. Any of the panel want to talk about this? Because I just went nuts behind the scenes. I was so irritated about this. Tracy, you read the Bremerton opinion.
Yeah, I did. And by way of metaphor, what I think we're telling you is stay on the interstate highway that we have provided for you. Yes, there are side roads that go alongside the interstate, and it may look like it's even faster to go over there. It may look like it's very attractive to go on that road. Stay in your lane, stay on the interstate, and you'll be fine. It's fine in your essay, and maybe if Lemon is tested for some reason, it's fine to say that the third prong is ambiguous. That actually shows that you know what you're talking about more than trying to say, I heard it was overturned, or I don't know what to say about this. You can just say it's ambiguous. So there's your answer.
Yeah.
Say it in your lane.
Yeah, and please stop reading Reddit. Just get off of it right now. And don't get your news from Google, for goodness sake. I don't know what else to say. Bob, you're shaking your head, man. It's crazy, isn't it?
It is. And I think this is the time where people think people are in a fragile state, and every news that kind of offsets what they know they have that heightened sense of awareness. Oh my goodness, which means everything I know is in jeopardy. And it's like people are looking for that sensationalism, like, hey, this is just to cause uproar. Meanwhile, it's like you're taking your eye off the ball. This is not the prize possession. You're just taking your eyes off the ball. Focus on what we give you and get rid of the noise, because all of that is just noise. Just block the noise, focus on what we give you, and you're going to be fine. For somebody who has taken the other guys and taken CVR, trust me, CVR is not even a step ahead. CVR is miles ahead. And to go to Tracy's point, stay on the interstate. Don't take the back roads. You're just going to go into darkness and chaos will ensue.
And Amanda, I know you do a lot of editorial work for us, and we're pretty accurate, aren't we?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time looking at things and refining things. And when I see an answer that is ambiguous, whether it's multiple choice or not, Jackson, that I've been editing those since I was in the course. We go back and we look at those things. And I would say, if I could give students a piece of advice right now, if you are enrolled in more than one course at this point and looking to other materials, like it is a mistake. It only stands to lower your score at this point. I feel like I can say that confidently, because just pick one, even if you're going to shut out like what we have to say now at CBR. That's not the advice I would give, but if that's your decision, that's your decision to do that, because it's just, I couldn't agree more with Bobka, what you're saying. It's just a distraction, getting on, and Tracy getting off the highway because it's imminent and you're driving towards this now. So just stay with the course or get off altogether, because you stand to confuse yourself and get lost in the direction, I think.
Yeah, I think that's true. And it's such a distraction. So let me tell you some things that we do know. We do know that if you're a Florida bar taker, based on prior guidance, there is a possibility that both the most recent term of the Supreme Court could be tested on day one of your exam. And we know that it's also possible that some of the Florida legislative enactments that took effect just a few days ago could be tested, although unlikely. Again, watch the Florida preview video. I talk about those in detail, and that's the information that you need. You should not be looking to third-party sources to get that information. I think it will ultimately just distract you. So there are a few new rules. The most important rule in Florida, if you just want the shortcut, is the permanent alimony is gone. So that's the big one. That could impact domestic relations, and we talk about that in the video. The last piece I wanted to just let you know about, which is long-term and hopefully doesn't apply to anybody, certainly doesn't apply to our July students. If you're a California bar taker, you may be aware that California is raising their application fees. They are reducing the number of testing locations. And this is part of a trend, I think, that's going on. We saw this in New York a couple of years ago. I think they're making it harder and harder for bar applicants. And so if you're listening to this or watching this and you're not enrolled in the course yet, I really encourage you to get enrolled, get into these exams as soon as you can. We're also getting guidance for the 2026 exams. I know it's a long way out. That's the next generation bar exam. It's pretty clear right now that California and Florida are not going to use that exam. The UBE will. We don't know if Texas and New York will go with the UBE. We got our first set of sample questions in this week. And I can tell you, for those of you that are just interested in this stuff, that the next generation bar exam is going to look like a big performance test with some multiple choice. Interestingly enough, multiple choice can have more than one correct answer. So why not? And some short answer, some video, some client counseling. It's going to look very different. And I don't know if it's a better test or a worse test. I don't think anybody can say that yet. But I can tell you it's out there. And if it were me, I'd rather take the test I know, which is the one that we've got right now. So this is why we want to get you all over the finish line as quickly as we can. It's going to be a very uncertain period of time in 2025, 26, 27. So I'm just putting that out there to the universe. So anyway, that's what's going on. And then last thing is that Tracy's going to riff at the end here a little bit. I think your title was The Hero No One Saw Coming. And given Tracy's interest in baseball, I'm guessing this has something to do with the All-Star game last night, but we'll see. Now, we are ready for some questions. The first question came from a student who said, is it too late to sign up for the workshops on essay writing, performance test, and MBE? The answer is it is not too late. These are 2-call workshops. Amanda and Brianna do them. And Amanda, you've still got availability for these?
Yep. And also I'm opening, I don't want anyone to fret. I've said this a few times. I'll be on California time this weekend. So within the next day or two, I will be opening up availability over the weekend. I'll be at a conference and I'll be able to go in and out. So if you're wanting a Saturday or Sunday appointment, fear not, they are coming.
Absolutely. So there's plenty of time. You can just go to the website or to the online course and place your order. And would encourage you, if you have not done this, there's a workshop on essay writing. There's a workshop on performance test writing, and there's a workshop on the MBE. I'm really excited about that MBE workshop. I really like it. Amanda, that's been fun to do, huh?
Yeah, it's been great. I think students are getting a lot out of it. Again, I've said this on multiple calls and coaching calls that I think some students are thinking they're using selective intuition, but they're not, or they're not committing to it fully, and they have some sort of block around that. And I think this helps them get over it. And the students that have taken it have all seen their scores go up. If not, they've seen them stay the same, but move with more confidence and move faster so that they are not rushed in taking the exam.
Yeah. Selective intuition matters, Babka.
Oh, absolutely. There's no two ways about it. And especially for the bar exam, the MBEs, it's going to come in handy every single time because you have 90 seconds to answer a question. And then when you start doubting yourself, second guessing yourself, no. But selective intuition is the answer. You check it off and you move on.
Yeah. If you don't understand selective intuition, doing this 2-call session with Amanda will give you not only the structure and the way to do it, but then you'll get a chance to practice it and you'll get to go over those questions with her. And it's very effective, I think, to help people understand how to do that. Next question, how should I practice for the MBE with 2 weeks remaining? It's a good question, isn't it? Let me throw this out to the panel and then I'll come around and clean it up here. Babka, what would you suggest if somebody said, how do I practice for the MBE in these next 2 weeks?
Practice. That's the passcode. That's the cheat code. Practice. You take the first 100, you review your outlines, mind maps, all of it first. You review your mind maps, do your 100, you take a break, come back, review what you just did, sort out your errors, why you failed, what you failed, and then at the same time, learn the lesson. Don't focus on the total score you get. That's irrelevant at this point. And then you take that momentum and you go to the next one. Repeat again and you move on. Don't just do everything and then I've done 100, I'm doing another one. No, you're focusing on quantity over quality. At this moment in time, quality is very critical to your study progress. So 100, review, do the next one.
I absolutely agree. Quality really beats quantity here. I get scared when people just say, I'm just going to sit down and run one set of exams after another without some. Amanda, what's your take on that? How should somebody practice for the MBE with a couple weeks going?
Yeah, I think at this point, and this is just what I'm seeing in my coaching and coaching calls, is that some students are wavering. They're like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to do it this way. Sometimes I do it this way. Sometimes I do it that way. Ultimately, I think now is the time to commit to practice how you're going to take this exam. You don't want to be walking into exam day still thinking about, am I going to read the call first? Am I going to stick to 90 seconds? Am I going to do selective intuition? Should I read the answers first? We've given you all the tools that we think we have to succeed, and MBE guidance is up to you now. It's your exam, your money, your time, how you want to take it. But no matter what you do, I would do it the same way each time. I would practice how I'm going to take the test at this point, because again, you don't want to get all convoluted in your head. And then I don't want to say choke on exam day, but you self-sabotage because you're not prepared with a plan of attack. You wouldn't go into the courtroom going, I don't know what I'm going to say today. You wouldn't go before a client without a plan. So this is your plan. This is your time to practice as we're going to take the exam.
Yeah. Tracy, do you want to weigh in on anything here?
Yeah, I was thinking about sports again, and the people who are successful, thinking about golfers, for example, they do the same exact thing, the same exact stretches, the same exact warm-ups. They place their tee just so, they place their balls just so, they pick the right club, and they've done it over and over so that they're not rethinking it every time. In a way, it's selective intuition. And so I totally agree with what my other two esteemed colleagues have said. Pick a way you're going to do it now so that it becomes second nature to you in 2 weeks, and stick to that plan. And now's the time to start. Maybe you don't have to dress all the way up. Put on a collared shirt, put on a pair of slacks, start acting like a professional when you're taking this exam.
Yeah, I think so. A couple of things I would say about how to practice near the end. One is go back to the day 24 email if you're in our course. Those are the directions. At this stage, you should not be doing the question number 101 on in each subject. We're too far into the course from a time standpoint to do that. So now you want to go to the online practice exams, the OPEs. And my recommendation here would be to do the 200 question OPE, which I believe is the 2006. I would do that test, number one. Secondly, I would do the 2021 comprehensive practice exam, again, in your course materials. That is a 7-topic, 200 question test. And then I would wrap up with the February 1991 MBE, which is only a 6-subject test, but pretty good predictor of how ultimate performance will be. Those 3 tests, so that's 600 MBEs over the next 2 weeks, is more than enough for almost everybody. If you're having significant problems with your multi-state, that is, you're falling well below what would be a passing score in your jurisdiction, I would do the first OPE, review the answer choices, then go back in, and you might want to do one of the other OPEs, 100-question exams, just to touch up and see how you're doing. And I think if you're doing that is sufficient. What I get nervous about when students start, as Bobka said, they just start going for quantity and just doing questions without really looking to see what they're getting right or wrong, not looking at their mind maps, not photo reading, not digging in deeper. I think that can become problematic. So I think you want to be careful about this. You want to keep a balance so that you're not overdoing. Now, if you're in a jurisdiction like California or Georgia, where you've got to hit a threshold to get your essays read, and you're falling far short of that threshold, then stay with MBE, stay there until you're hitting that threshold. But I would say for UBE students, for Florida students, keep a balance, keep following the study guide, and jump into a group coaching call if you're really unclear, and let the group coaches help you a little bit with that as well. We got a lot of questions about MBEs. One of them was, somebody said, I'm cutting it close with time. If we have to choose between the two, between OPEs and MBEs, which should we do? I've given you my sense. Do at least one of the OPEs, do a couple of the MBEs. But again, go back to the day 24 email where I break down every single test, tell you the benchmarks, tell you what the strengths and weaknesses are. No test is perfect. No test is going to do everything for you. So I think you want to be balanced there.
Jackson, there's a question in the chat. How do all of these strategies combine with the multiple pass method?
So the multiple pass method was something that we used to teach that said you go through and you do all the easy questions first, then you come back, you do the next level of difficulty, then the next level of difficulty. My guidance today would be not to do that. With selective intuition at 90 seconds a question, I would just take question 1 and do it, then question 2, then question 3, and so on. I would not skip any. Because frankly, if you don't get the answer in 90 seconds, you're not going to get it right statistically. And so don't worry about it. Just keep moving. And so I would suggest that multiple pass is probably not as effective as selective intuition. And we kept that lecture up there as an option, but I don't see a great value to it. Another question that we got around the MBE, student took the February 91 test, MBE 1, and they said, I found myself in the danger zone based on the indicators you provided at the end of the first 100 questions. Is it possible to develop a 10-day plan to beat the bar? My response back to the student was, whoa, that's only 100 questions. Slow your roll. You got to do the full exam, all 200 questions, because the first part is different than the second part. Bobka, you want to talk about that a little bit? People get a little bit mistaken sometimes, don't they?
Yeah. And I think this is the point where people tend to focus more on the score rather than the progress they are making. Because the 91 test is good, it's a good benchmark, but there is always room for improvement. That's what I always say in my coaching call. I don't know what was my score on the February 91 when I retook the bar exam and passed, but my MBE score was 145. And at the same time, you did only 100 questions. It's like how you do half of the work and then you want a bigger score. The math doesn't add up. So it's don't focus on the score, focus on the progress you are making. And at the same time, the cheat code is practice. You practice, you learn from your errors, and then you move on. Focusing on the score doesn't have any correlation with your success on the bar exam.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I'll just say what I say in the lectures, which is that the morning session for some people on the actual bar exam will be very difficult. For others, it will be very easy. There are actually 4 different forms of the same 100 questions that are given in each administration of the exam. The reason for that is to avoid, obviously, cheating. And some of those forms, Form A, for example, you could start with very long fact patterns, which tends to make you think, if you're doing the exam in a traditional way, not selective intuition, you can get stuck on those early questions and feel like it's a brutal exam. Whereas somebody else gets the short fact patterns at the beginning and they're just zipping through them and they feel like it's really easy. Then in the afternoon, everybody gets a different form of the same 100 questions and it can flip dramatically for you. Again, if you're doing selective intuition, none of that matters because you're going to finish in 2.5 hours, which means you've got some time to take a break at 50 questions or 25 questions or wherever you want. So I'll emphasize it again. Selective intuition is the key to the MBE. If you do that, you're going to be just fine. In terms of a 10-day plan or a 14-day plan to beat the bar, I guess it'd be a good product. I don't know what it would be. I'm not sure how one does a 10-day plan to beat the bar, but I'll think about it. But I think everything that you're hearing here, which is just common sense, working on your weaknesses, getting the questions that you're missing and digging in and finding out why you're missing them, mind mapping them, photo reading and going back, those are the keys. There's no secret here. There's no magic pill that you can take that's going to make it work for you. But if you do the basics, you're going to be fine. And don't freak out, regardless of what your score is. Even though the February 91 is a predictive test and has been for decades now, it's not infallible. Every year I get people that do very poorly on that exam who pass. And I get people that do very well on that exam that don't pass. So while it's got some predictive ability, it is not absolute. And it always worries me that people take it quite that way.
So Jackson, I could add a little bit to that. I know that we go back a lot to sports analogies, but I think students are looking for, part of it is, again, what Bobka's saying, like this, I just want to know for sure I'm going to pass. None of us know for sure we're going to pass, no matter how well you do on the 1991 exam. Just like you can take 100 free throws and then at game time, you can miss the last one, like you can miss a buzzer, like beating shot. You can miss. And that is what happens. So you have to sit with the fact that you are not going to get a guarantee. People in the big box courses are doing the same thing right now. They're like, they told me I had to get 75% done. So if I just get 75% done, I'll be done. And then my other response, what should I do in the last 14 days? So I feel like I do have the answer. It's just in my head. And I say this before every bar exam, so I'll take the opportunity to say it now. If somebody told me I only had 10 days to study for the bar exam, what would you do? I would boil each subject down to its most basic sentence or two. And this gets at what Jackson is saying, to not lose common sense. And what we're all saying is don't go down these rabbit holes, because I'm meeting with students, especially now, and I'm asking them, what do you know about contracts? And they're like, the bad guy doesn't win. The person trying to get away with something doesn't win. It's about enforcing the deal. And I'm like, what answer does that? I don't care about the mailbox rule. I don't care about who said that first. I don't care about the date it was sent. What answer choice doesn't let the bad guy win and enforces the deal that you read if the client were in front of you? And you can get it right. I can't do that for you. I can't boil each subject down to what it means in your mind. But I think that's what it is, getting back to the basics. That's what mind mapping ultimately does. So if you have been mind mapping all along, you're in a really good place because you've boiled a lot of your subjects down. And you're like bigger subsubjects, like negligence might as well be a subject of his own on the bar exam. Future interest, but you can boil those things down to one or two things. And then you know, yeah, that's who's going to win here. So if I had 10 days and I had to increase my score, I wouldn't lose my common sense. And I would think about, what do each of these subjects really get at their core? And when I get stuck, right, that's what I would fall back to.
Yeah. And that's wisdom from somebody that scored a 166 on the multi-state. So I think she knows what she's talking about. All right. Thank you. That's perfect. A related question that we got during the week was, how do I figure out my scaled score if I'm doing a practice MBE? And that requires us to explain a little bit about where these tests come from. The online practice exams come from the NCBE, but they were never given as full-length tests. As a result, you can't scale them, and the examiners don't scale them. So you just have to look at your raw score. And then to that, what we would typically do is add 10 to 15 points. That would be a rough approximation on the OPEs to get you to a scaled score. On MBE 1, 2, and 3, those were given as exams. However, only MBE 1 and 3 actually got scaled scores. MBE 2 was actually a disaster when it was given, and the examiners had to blow it up, which is why they made it available to us. It's just practice questions. So you will see the scaled score for MBE 1 and 3, I believe, in your course materials, and it's a sliding scale. It's not the same number of points. So the fewer questions you get correct, the more scale points you get, but none of that really matters, having said all of that, because now the test is built on 175 questions that count out of the 200, and that scale is completely different than the one that's being used in these prior exams. So what does all that mean? It means nothing. Just count your raw score, look at that, see where you're at. So if you're taking the Florida exam, you need a 136 scaled, I'm going to say that you really want to be at about 130 raw questions correct. If you're in the UBE and you need a 260, we would divide that in half, say 130 is the multi-state. Again, I would say you want to be about 125 scaled, 125 raw would get you to that 130 scaled or above it. If you're taking California, where you need a 139 scaled, you need about 135 raw correct. And if you're in Georgia, where you need a 135 scaled, again, I would aim for about 130 raw correct. So that's the basics on all of that. And then the 2021 comprehensive practice exam, that is a totally fabricated, made up test by the NCBE. It was never given as an actual bar exam. It's just questions that they had. And so there's no scale. There's no way to figure that out. So again, just look at your raw score.
Jackson, there's another question in the chat. Can you give some advice about essays versus reviewing the substantive law? Is it more important to keep practicing essays at this point or reviewing the substantive law?
Okay. Actually, that was tied into a question that we got this week. Somebody said, I'm having a problem with issue spotting when I'm writing my essays. And of course, my back clenched up and my fingers went like this and I freaked out. And the student said, I'm doing lots of essay practice and review so that I can learn from my mistakes. And I'm reading sample answers. I think that's the worst thing you could be doing. I think that the way that you should be approaching essay writing is to go to your weakest subjects. Do not try, as we talked about earlier, don't try to do everything. You don't have time to do everything. You don't need to do everything. Make a list of all the essay subjects in your exam and put them in inverse order in terms of what subject, if it showed up when you opened up your book on Tuesday morning, what would be the one subject that you most dislike, that you would hate to see? Put that at the top of your list and then go to your second and third. Maybe you've got 4 topics that you really hate. Spend your time being uncomfortable for the next 2 weeks. Work in that first subject. Let's say it's property, because for me, it's always property. And take the property subject, photo read it, look at your mind maps, and then pick some recent essay questions from our materials for that topic. Do an essay under time conditions, finish your essay, then go back and review the sample or model answer from our materials, then look at your mind map, add the topics that you missed or had trouble with to your mind map, go back to the outline, look at that, and check the work. Then do another question in property, in this example, and start narrowing it down until you desensitize yourself to that subject. And that might mean you spend a whole day doing property. That's fine. There's no loss to that, but the goal is to desensitize. Now, at the bottom of your list are going to be a few subjects that you feel pretty good about. You may never get to those again, and that's just fine. The structure of the writing stays the same all the time. So it's really just a matter now of working on substance, and the substance comes from that practice in depth. And I think that's the real key. But just doing an essay and saying, look, it's close to what's in the sample answer, and then we go on, I think that's not very valuable. Amanda, do you have thoughts about that?
I would completely agree. I think that, again, we're not trying to memorize the law. So saying learning substantive law, like learn through the practice. You accomplish two things. You improve your writing, you get more familiar with the topic, you get more comfortable just using language around the topic, especially in areas you don't like. Like I didn't take, what is it like? I don't even know. One of the topics I didn't take in law school, and I'd been 12 years since I went to law school, and then it was like on the UBE, and I just wasn't comfortable with the language right around it. And just doing those essays the last week leading up to it was great, because I might not have known every nuance of the law. That might not have been in my subconscious mind, but the language was there to talk about the subject knowledgeably and logically. And thank goodness I did, because it was on the exam. So I felt good about that. So all good advice Jackson is giving.
Yeah. I think at this point, the review of substantive law happens in the context of writing and seeing where it fits into your mind map and into the overall study structure. I think just trying to pour in more abstract law right now just doesn't do you much good. That's my take on it. Tracy, do you have a feeling about that?
Yeah, even if you don't have time to write full essays, just as Amanda says, using the language, write a few sentences about what the basics are, use the legal concepts correctly in a sentence, make sure your spelling's correct of those. I'm seeing a lot of problems with that. And just get yourself familiar with it. You don't have to do the full essay. What you have to do is take it from wherever it is in here and put it out on a page, so that when you see it on the exam, you're going to see it in your mind's eye, and you're going to be able to write it from there.
Babka, what's your thought?
Yeah, I think you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. That's the honest truth. And for me, at least, secure transactions, trust me, up till today, I don't like that subject. But I was like, oh, I'm praying to God this doesn't come on the bar exam, but for whatever reason, I still have to get ready. And it was uncomfortable for me studying that, but I was like, you know what? You still got to study it. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean it's not going to come. And I still had to study it. And to Tracy's point, so long as you have a basic knowledge of it, and then you can spit it out on a piece of paper, you play around with the words, you should be good.
The thing I really want to caution you against is just becoming a robot right now and just writing essays all day long. That is just the least productive thing you can be doing. Please don't do that. Be intentional about your work. Write and then study what you've written, get some value out of it. And don't just look at sample answers. Oh my God, they're terrible. In many cases, they just don't make any sense. They come from so many different sources, and we can't edit them in some cases. So we have to put them out the way they are. If you go back in the email series on day 29, I think, I talked about why you do not want to do that. It's a bad plan. So just keep that in mind. Okay.
There's one more question in the chat. If you're in a state needing 270, how much raw score do you need?
Just divide it by 2. It's a 135, so you need a 130. Okay, that's the answer. We're talking about multi-state there.
And one final question on the chat. When you say raw score, does that mean how much correct out of 200 questions?
Yeah, it does. That's exactly what it means.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Great. So MBE is fun. You can get so caught up in the geekiness of it. It's kind of like trying to keep score in baseball sometimes. So with that, I'm guessing you're going to talk about baseball, Tracy. So let me toss the ball to you.
I am, but I'm actually talking about heroism. So Elias Diaz is the starting catcher for my beloved but last place Colorado Rockies, a Venezuelan baseball journeyman of unprivileged upbringing. He played for many years overseas, from the time he was a little child, always dreaming of maybe coming to America and living the American dream. He worked hard, he practiced his skills, and he waited each game day for his chance to help his team win. Last night, the Major League Baseball All-Star game was played, as my brother reminded me, and team starters are decided by fan votes, and then the reserve squad is made up of managers' picks. Now, every team has to have at least one player on the all-star team for that league. The Rockies had one and only one player, not voted in. He was a reserve player, the first catcher to ever represent the Rockies. 32 years old, which is really old for a baseball catcher, Elias Diaz. Managers try to let all those chosen for the team play at least one half inning in the All-Star game. And so it was that Elias Diaz, the hero of the National League team that no one saw coming, the Nationals were on their way to losing their 12th straight All-Star game. All right. And they were down 2-1 in the eighth inning. Now, statistically, most of you are expected to strike out on the bar exam. That's what your previous results would indicate. That's what former law professors, employers, family, and friends may have told you. That's what the bar exam pass rate tells you. And for repeat takers, the statistics predict another out for you. This may be what you're telling yourself. I can't do this. I'm not smart enough to pass the exam. I type too slow. I can't seem to get selective intuition to work. FLA is not what I learned in law school. The negative self-talk can be deafening, can it? But I'm here. Jackson's here. June and Amanda and Bobka and Brianna are all here offering you a different narrative. We're going to be in the stands rooting for you when you step up to the plate on July 24th and you swing. But you have to believe in you. You have to believe you can be the hero of your own story. Elias Diaz stepped up to the plate and he closed his eyes for a brief moment, as Jackson suggests you do before you go through an MBE question. And he took a slow breath. And then he let his selective intuition show him the correct answer. That's right. Just like Jackson teaches in today's video on taking the MBE, Diaz didn't overthink his at-bat because he'd done the work before. With 2 strikes against him, does this sound familiar? He fouled off a third pitch, and then he intuitively selected the next pitch, the right pitch, and he sent it 360 feet over the left field wall for a 2-run home run. He was the hero of the game. The National League finally won against the odds. He was the MVP. Who would have thought? No one saw that coming. The lesson of this story, do your work. Practice hard. You're all journeymen and journeywomen. Be ready for the exam and swing for the fence when your at-bat comes. You can do this. You can be the hero of your own story.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, I don't know what to add to that. With these 2 weeks coming up, this is a productive time. You will get much better in these 2 weeks. Do not stop. Don't quit. Don't give up. Don't say this is as good as it's going to get. That's not true. There is massive improvement that happens over these next 2 weeks. If you're in the coaching programs, work with your coaches. We see great improvement with the students we work with at the end. If you haven't signed up for the workshops and you feel like you need help with the multi-state or the essays or the performance tests, we're here to help you. It's a very productive way to go. Join the group coaching calls. All of our coaches have been in a position where they can help you and they want to help you, and we believe that it's valuable. You don't have to give up at this stage, and you should not give up at this stage. Now, next week, we're going to be back. We'll wrap up all of the things we've been talking about. We'll give you our last minute suggestions and advice as you come into that final approach to the exam. But it is far too early to take your foot off the accelerator here. And it is the opportunity and the time when you will see tremendous growth and development. So that's what we encourage all of you to do. I want to thank our panel for being here today. It's great to see all of you. We will look forward to reconvening next week, and then we're going to take some time off after the exam because this is hard work on our end, but it's a labor of love. Let me tell you, everybody that's here is here because they want to see all of you be successful, and you can be the all-star hero of the game. So
APMB.
yeah. Okay, I'll go with that. All right. Listen, guys, thank you so much. We'll see you again next Wednesday. Take care. Have a great study week, and we'll talk to you later.